I'm Coco Khan. Hello, I'm a columnist and feature writer for The Guardian, and I'm your chair for today, where we'll be talking about social mobility. Specifically, we'll be talking about how we can get young people from all walks of life into top jobs and the professional sectors, and what they can expect when they're in there. People have very different perceptions of class. What counts as middle or upper, people identify themselves in a different way than perhaps others might. But what we can say definitively is that top jobs tend to be taken by university graduates, especially Russell Group universities. People from lower economic backgrounds remain poorly represented in really great jobs, secure jobs, jobs that are really important and give us all a stake in society. But increasingly, the good news is that businesses are understanding that inclusion reaps many, many awards. So, just to give you a bit of background about this event, it's hosted by Guardian Jobs, and we couldn't have done it without the help of Your Game Plan. They're a training and career development provider, and we'll be hearing from their founder, Danny, a little bit later. And this whole thing has been paid for by ACCA, which I'm going to try and pronounce without tripping over my words, which is the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. Now, they are the world's leading body for professional accountants, and they offer a range of globally recognised qualifications in accountancy and in business that you can start without any existing qualifications. And it's interesting with accountancy and finance and business and all those jobs that certainly I have always perceived as one that you wear a suit to, because those are the archetype of the professional job and the professional sector. So for this event, yes, we're going to be talking about accounting and business and finance, but I really hope it will be useful for anyone looking at alternative paths into the professions, whether it's law, public sector, or even my own sector, media, which that would be great, actually. Yeah, need some normal people in the media, so please come on down. We're going to be live for about an hour and 15 minutes, and for the first sort of 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to be talking to Bola Lawal. She's a young finance professional, also took that non-traditional route, so we'll be talking to her about her journey in entering the workforce. And then we'll be staggering the introduction of our great panel, and I'm really excited for you to meet them. Between all of them, they kind of know everything. So if you do have questions for them, there's a couple of ways we can take them. I know that some of you have sent your questions in advance, so thank you for those. I will try to fit in as many as I can, but there are quite a lot. But also, as the conversation's going, please do use the Q&A function on your screen. It should be on the right of your window. You can send it in anonymously. Your name, I love names, and I'd also love to hear where you're joining us from. A little birdie told me we might have a global little thing going on today, which is very exciting. So let us know. You also have the option to like other people's questions, and again, we'll try to answer as many as we can. We won't be able to get through all of them probably, but liking other people's questions tells us that it's important to you, so we'll certainly keep an eye on that. And if any of you are on social media, please do follow along. So the handles are Guardian Jobs. There's also ACCA_UK. There's also Your Game Plan UK, and we'll all be using the same hashtag, which is Guardian Break the Ceiling 2021. It's GDN, that's how we abbreviate it. So GDN Break the Ceiling 2021. Okay, so I think you've heard enough of the intro stuff. Let's get cracking. I've got a great first guest. I'm really excited to introduce you to her. So I'd like to give a warm welcome. How do you give a warm welcome on video? Anyway, I'd love you to meet Bola Lawal. She's part of this new generation of professionals who are challenging the stereotypes of what a professional looks like and how they get there, what their journey is. Bola was the first woman to qualify as an accountant through, it's a kind of social mobility charity scheme called Leadership Through Sport and Business. She qualified through that. And yeah, that charity is all about getting bright young things into these traditionally middle class, university educated professions. And she qualified through that. She's now a regulatory reporting analyst at Santander. Hi, Bola. I do want to ask you about your journey, but also I have to ask you first, what is a regulatory reporting analyst? What does that mean for us non-accountants?
Okay, so this is a tricky question. It's quite ironic because whenever I used to ask people this question when I started out my career, they always used to find it difficult to answer. But just to give a bit of background, so I work in the banking industry, and because of that, because banks are highly regulated, because they're obviously an integral part of society and integral to the economy of a country, we are regulated, and we are regulated by a regulatory body. And because of that, we have to provide financial information on our activities at various intervals. So whether that's monthly, quarterly, or annually to our regulators. So that's where my team comes in. So we provide some of these reports to the regulators, and that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. We basically tend to provide reports to prepare us for these submissions. But personally, for me, I tend to provide internal reports as well. So the internal reports that I do show movements in our day-to-day figures, just so to give our internal stakeholders an idea of what our figures are going to look like on a monthly basis. In addition to that, we tend to get questions from our regulators a lot. So we have to perform extensive analysis on our data sets so we can provide them with answers on what they need. We also tend to work closely with IT as well, try to streamline how we work, make things more efficient in the way we do things at work. It's quite funny because I log in every single day and expect to work on something and to be doing something, and it changes a lot. So by the end of the day, I'm doing something very different to what I expect to be doing. So it makes it exciting and is very different. So I hope that kind of gives an idea. Every day is very, very different. So it's difficult to say what a day would look like, but that kind of gives an overview.
That was a lot there. That was quite a lot to take in. Like, even for me, I was like, a lot of stuff going on. I mean, when you first decided to pursue the accounting pathway, I'm guessing what you just said there was not what you were expecting would happen. What were you expecting was going to happen?
So what I was expecting initially, my initial view of what I was going to be doing was going to be working in practice, basically preparing financial statements for different companies, whether they're limited companies, sole traders. So that's what I thought it was going to look like, debits and credits. I don't know if everyone knows about that, but it's literally preparing financial statements. Whereas what I do now is totally different from that. Because I work with such a large organization, I tend to work on small pieces of what the overall financial side of things look like in the finance department. So it's very different to what I expected it to be, but I think that's what a lot of people are going to get to find out from, obviously, when other people come onto this topic, see how different finance is from what you learn in school and what accountancy looks like.
That seems to be like a recurring theme quite often when talking about like getting new people into the professions. It's just this lack of knowledge about what their jobs actually involve, and therefore whether you can do it. I mean, how did you how did you decide to take the plunge, not knowing what it would be?
So at GCSE, when I studied GCSE, I was quite good at maths, and because of that, at that time, usually when you're good at maths and you're about to choose your options for college, accountancy was something that was mentioned to me. Even though now that I'm in it, it's a lot more than maths. It's a lot wider than that. It's beyond maths. But that's when I got into accountancy. So I studied at A level, and my second year of college was when I realised I was quite good at it, and that's what kind of pushed me towards thinking, I'm going to get into this. I want to work in the financial services industry because it was really interesting to me. So when I finished college, I decided to look into ways to get into it. So at college, after you finish, people talk about university. That's usually the next step. But because I knew I wanted to do, and because of my personal circumstances as well, I decided to look at other options that were available. So I do what most people would do on a day, what most people do when they needed more information, and that's to go on Google. So I Googled what employees were looking for. And what I noticed about employees was they really looks for accounting qualifications, so whether that's ACC or other qualifications. So I thought to myself, okay, so if this is what employees are looking for, I need to really look into this and figure out how I can get these qualifications. So in my process of looking into that as well, I found out about apprenticeships, and I went on a national apprenticeship website, and that's opened up a whole new ball game for me. I found out about the social mobility charity, Leadership Through Sports and Business, as you mentioned earlier on, and that literally changed the trajectory of my career. It taught me a lot because we were given the support and guidance that we needed as young people who didn't know anything about finance or accountancy, given some skills through personal and skills development, through workshops, CV workshops. We had opportunities to visit a lot of companies so we can get a better idea of what these companies did and what our day-to-day life would look like if we was to work in these companies. And that's literally how my career started. I was supported to get an apprenticeship as well, so I got an apprenticeship role through the social mobility charity as well.
So having come out of that, and now, because I'm right in thinking that you work in the city, right?
Yes.
So now that you're in this environment with the skyscrapers, and I'm guessing a load of them probably all went to, if not the top universities, they at least maybe even went to school together. And now that you're there, do you feel that you're any different, or actually you know exactly what you're doing?
The great thing initially, I felt like I was gonna feel quite different. It was quite uncomfortable at first, but the great thing about being in the program that I was on was that we had the opportunity to visit a lot of these places and meet the people that were there, and that really humanized them a lot and kind of showed you that there isn't anything major or crazy about it. You can actually do what these people are doing, and that was great about the route that I took, was that it was really intimidating. It's intimidating for anybody to looking into the city. Those buildings alone scare anybody when you walk there, thinking to yourself, they must be really smart people. And there are a lot of smart people in there, but it kind of makes you feel like it's difficult that you don't feel like you can achieve what they've achieved. But it's really possible when you start working in those environments, you get a lot of support with people as well. You learn as you go along, and that's how you start to believe in yourself and believe that, I can actually do this. And I feel quite comfortable now after doing it for a couple of years that, it's not, there's nothing crazy about it. There's nothing, there's nothing different about it. It's like every other industry. It's just that from the onset, it looks very scary because of obviously historically, there's always been certain types of people who've been working in those sectors.
You said earlier, due to personal circumstances, you didn't want to go down the university route. Fine if you don't want to tell us what those circumstances are, by the way. But I'm just curious. I'm guessing some of your mates from school did go the university route. Like, how do you compare in careers now?
So a lot of my friends did go to university, and what was different for me was when I was doing my apprenticeship, it was really difficult to explain to people what I was doing, what the process was, because I was enjoying myself and I was learning a lot, but a lot of my friends will talk about uni, going to studies, going out, enjoying themselves, doing things like that. And you do feel a little bit left out sometimes. But what was great for me was that I had other people. I met a whole new group of people who were doing the same thing I was doing, which was apprenticeship. So that really gave me a lot of comfort, having the support of those people around me. So even though my immediate friends weren't doing the same things I did, I met a whole group of new people who were taking the same route that I was taking. And what I noticed as well when my friends finished university was that I was in a different position because I've had a couple of years of experience of being in the industry. So I had an idea of what the industry was about, and I was able to obviously give them advice as to what to expect and the kind of things they should be expecting in terms of study leaves, ACCA qualification, what obviously most employers will still want you to do that. And that kind of leads back to part of the reason why I decided to go the route I took, because I realized that if I went to university, I wasn't gonna have ACCA qualification. I still needed to do it after I finished college, after I finished university. So that's why I thought to myself, why not take this route and actually do it in a way that was quicker for me, in a way that was quicker for me anyway, and it was better for my circumstances.
I mean, I've been following you online, and as I understand it, when you're not working at Santander, you're winning awards, and you talk quite openly about sustainability, and it's important to you, and I can respect. But also, I wanted to ask, quite often when people talk about social mobility, they talk about grades, and I wondered if you felt that grades were as important, or maybe, what are your thoughts on grades? Like, are they as important as everyone makes out?
I think grades are important. Obviously, that's from someone who, with myself, I did get the grades and I could have gone to university if I wanted to. Grades are important, but also do you think that they're not the only measure of success or potential in a person? There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more that makes a person than what grades they got at school. And I think that's the great thing about the industry right now and the way things are, is that I see a lot of employers are opening up their pool and by scraping things like their degree requirement, their grades requirement, because it allows you to have a lot more people who can apply, who come from different types of circumstances, who have a lot more skills and talent that you wouldn't expect. There's a lot more to what working life is like than the grade you got at school. There are people who are self-driven, motivated, they've got strong work ethic, they're student thinkers, they're fast decision makers, and those type of things aren't always measured by the grades that you got at school. So I think it's very important for people to look at grades, but also to look beyond that as well and open the door to a lot more talented young individuals.
Great. Well, Bola, you're going to stay with us. I'm going to just introduce our next panelist, Danny, because I know he has a few things to say on education and assessing people beyond that. Hi, Danny.
Hi.
There you are. Hello. Hi.
How are you doing?
So I'm good, thank you. So I introduced Danny a little bit earlier for the people that were here for the introduction. He's the founder of Your Game Plan, who helped us pull this event together. So thank you, Danny. And yeah, I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is, why did you set it up? What does it do?
Yeah, good. Well, both good questions. I think the reason I set up Your Game Plan was a mix of two things. It was my personal experience and my personal journey, coupled with my professional journey and what I was seeing was lacking in the market. So to touch on the personal journey first, I was relatively run-of-the-mill at school, kind of average, kind of middle sets. And there was always the conversation about potentially going to sixth form of university after GCSEs. And just for a reference, this was about 15 years ago. So obviously things have changed slightly. But what inevitably happened was I never wanted to push myself to university. And my grades kind of reflected that. And I didn't really do well enough in GCSE to see an academic future. However, because of, in my opinion, flaws in the educational system, that was something that was still pushed towards me by our school. So our head of sixth form kind of said to me, look, we still want you to go to sixth form to push on to university, even though really academics wasn't right for me. So that was a real red flag immediately. I was thinking, this is a system that I haven't excelled in. So how is the only solution to put me back into it? So I kind of went through this process of thinking, no, this isn't right, but I do want to pursue a professional career. So I'm going to do that on my own. So I kind of went forward and started applying for loads of jobs and trying to get into a role in London. And I had 7 or 8 interviews before I got the job that I got. And all of the feedback was very similar in those 7 or 8 interviews. It was, you're a really bright guy, you're really smart, you're really personable, but, your CV and interview wasn't great. You're not fully prepared for the industry you're trying to work in. And I just kept coming back to this realization of, well, how am I meant to know these things? Because I've never been taught them. This was never part of the curriculum. It was never part of the conversation for me as a young person. And I always carried that as something that I wanted to go back and try and positively influence. I was lucky enough to forge a professional career in recruitment, comms and marketing, and I've spent the last kind of decade specialising around early talent. And this was really the driver for me to launch Your Game Plan, because I spent a lot of time working with FTSE 250 companies who were really pro diversity and inclusion and wanted to kind of have their talent pipeline more representative of society. But what was happening was they were just doing that via the graduate cohort. And the graduate cohort is still predominantly white middle class, and it's not representative of society. And inevitably, if you keep fishing in the same pond, you're going to keep catching the same fish. So it was very hard for them to branch out and kind of make a more diverse workforce. So to do that, I felt they had to really look more towards school and school leavers and people from different backgrounds. So I launched Your Game Plan to do that. So it's an online digital learning platform which is completely free for every school in the UK and every 14 to 19-year-old in the country. We've built in partnership with a company called BA Education, who are a leading online training provider, 28 soft and employability courses that cover things like how to speak in public, how to deal with constructive criticism, office etiquette, how to interview well. And then we got all of those courses certified by the CPD, so they all come with a qualification. And then we've worked around putting that into schools for free. And I think I just want to touch on the reason we do this for free, because I don't think it's publicised well enough. The reason we felt so strongly about not charging schools is when you look at the data around careers budget and how unfair it is. There was a survey by the Careers and Enterprise Company last year of 750 careers leaders in schools. 62% think that budget is stopping them from doing their job properly. And 31% of schools don't have a budget for careers education. So when you consider we're already starting, this system in a negative way, that's why it's really important for employers to come to the fore a bit more and put way more effort into achieving positivity in diversity and inclusion, whether that's ethnicity, race, gender, class, sexuality, whatever it is. We all need to do more to make a more representative society in the workplace.
You mentioned there that part of what you do is provide courses that kind of give you a certification in soft skills. People talk a lot about soft skills. It's quite elusive. What does it mean to have soft skills? What are they? And is that something that you can teach?
Yeah, it's a good question. I look at it in a very transactional way, and I look at it maybe a bit differently to some people. I look at soft skills as a confidence boost. I think that's the key of what it is. Like, if you are the way our societal rhetoric works around education is if you are told from 7 or 8 years old, if you don't go to university, then somehow you're failed, right? That's how we look at the world, okay? So if you're a young person that maybe isn't, super academic or doesn't choose to go to university, you get to this point at 17 or 18 and you think, well, I still want to pursue a professional career, but I've been told my whole academic life that I'm probably not good enough to do it. So what we wanted to do was create this platform that made every young person feel like they could be anything they wanted to be. They could achieve anything they wanted to do. And to do that, we've given them the soft skills to do so. So I think, in essence, they're transferable employability skills. There's something that you could walk into an environment and not feel completely lost by it. If you're asked to present for the first time at 18 in an interview situation and you don't know how to do that, my opinion is there should be training for that in schools, and currently there's not, and in some cases there's no budget for it. So that was really how we looked at soft skills. It was to give people a platform and the confidence to achieve what they wanted to do.
Mm. I'm right in thinking that Your Game Plan works with a whole range of top businesses, FTSE 250 as you outlined. And I know that increasingly in the world of business, people have been talking about diversity, not just in the moral sense, of course, the society, everyone needs to feel that they can succeed within it, of course, but the business case of it is profitable. And I wondered if you could just give us a summary of that sort of thinking, because I think it's really important that everyone understands that this is where we're trying to move to in business and culture.
Of course, yeah, I'll try my best. I think, I mean, firstly, for me, diversity and inclusion is just an extension of equality. And that's something we should all be striving to from a societal point of view in every aspect, not just the workplace. But it should be a fundamental pillar of any company's culture and focus. And the reason for that is there's just not a doubt that ensuring you have a diverse workforce doesn't only improve internal culture and variety in thought, but also makes you more accessible to a larger client base and a broader range of applicants. So much research shows that applicants are more likely to apply at a company they feel represents them, and that by not doing that, you're restricting yourself from hiring some of the best talent in the country. But I think furthermore, and also regardless of the business case or whether we're talking about a patient, a learner, a consumer, companies should represent the community that they serve. Users, whatever they may be, are no longer just looking for a transactional-based relationship. They want someone who they feel respects and understands them. And to do that, you have to be a representative workforce.
Thank you, Danny. Well, I mean, we could talk more about this, and I hope we will. I'm just conscious of a little bit of time, so I want to bring in our next panellist, who is Tim Kelland. He's the Assistant Director of Public Health Wales. He's been a member of the ACCA since 2003 and is currently their Advocate of the Year, noted for his committed mentoring of students that join the Welsh NHS finance team. Hi, Tim.
Hello there.
So, am I right in thinking that diversifying accountancy it's something of a long personal mission for you, isn't it?
I wouldn't say it's a long personal mission. I think it's been a great learning for me and the NHS where I work in Wales. I started off leaving school with 0 qualifications. I was a disgrace to my father because he was the deputy headmaster of the school I went to. I believed I was dull, and I could prove it because I had certificates that showed it. Fortunately, I spent 2 weeks in the post room. I was asked if I'd like to go to work in the post room of one of the local hospitals. And on the last day of the second week, fortunately, somebody working in finance got run over by a bus. And I was asked whether I would cover her while she was off. And 36 years later, I'm still working in NHS Wales. And if I just talk about my first experiences in NHS Wales finance department, when I went in there, exactly as Bola and Danny have talked about, they were full of university graduates, people who have qualified accountants, numbers people. I offered something different. I'm pretty good at communicating, a bit social. These people, they were geeks, I call them. They're a bit boring, you know. But I thrived. I absolutely thrived, and I was able to go out and meet with clinicians. Spent lots of time discussing their position. One of the problems we had, however, was limited resources. And one thing that once I qualified as an accountant, I didn't start to try to qualify as an accountant until I was 30, but I realised I needed to qualify to show other people that I was capable of doing the job I was already doing. And I did qualify, I didn't fail an exam. And as soon as I qualified, that gave me the badge and it opened lots and lots of doors. And one opportunity I had was to go represent Welsh Government on a placement in Namibia. And I was going to go out there and I was going to show them how I was going to help them develop a business case to the World Wide Bank to help them with their challenge that was HIV at the time. And I really thought I'd go there and I'd teach them everything I know and hopefully it would work out that way. But at the end of the placement, I realised I learned far more from them than they would have learned from me. I did do some teaching, but having spent 20 years in NHS at the time, trying to manage with limited resources, these people that I was working with in Namibia, they'd spent their whole lives, in every aspect of their lives, managing with limited resources. And it was a huge learning to me, and I was able very quickly to, when I came back, to say, diversity, we need to bring people in from all sorts of aspects of society. And the importance of that can't be underestimated. Most successful organisations in the UK now would have recognised bringing in a diversified workforce that represents society. And I don't think I'm an ambassador, I just learned it, and I think that's the way forward for my professional body, which is the ACCA, and certainly NHS Wales.
I mean, that was an amazing story, I have to say. And I know you said, oh, well, I just learnt it, but I think something to be said, it's a lesson that many people, many organisations still have to learn. I'm very heartened to hear that certainly the NHS kind of spearheading that. I mean, how has the culture in terms of what you do in finance changed in those 30 years of the NHS?
That's fascinating. The NHS has changed remarkably, and the finance profession within the NHS has also changed. It's completely different. When I first started in the NHS was about hospitals. It was a place where you went to either get made better or die. However, the NHS has been extremely successful over the years, and we are capable now of keeping lots and lots of people alive, and it's very, very expensive. And we haven't got enough to do everything. So the role of the accountant has completely changed. We've moved away from a cost culture where when I first started, I would meet with clinicians to see how we could reduce the costs we spend on certain things. And I felt a bit of an enemy of the clinician to start with. Over the last 5 years, especially in NHS Wales, I think Welsh Government have realised that the accountants is the solution to the problem they had. And what we're doing in Wales, for example, is we are working as accountancy professions really closely with our clinicians. And we are doing we're analysing clinical pathways, costing up clinical pathways and looking at patient outcomes from interventions and trying to tease out which gives the best return for an intervention to make sure we offer the best value to our patients. So we've moved from a cost culture to a value-based culture. And I'll give you an example of something we've done. If you think about, you might not know this, but the average smoker in the UK consumes over £30,000 more NHS resource than a non-smoker during their lifetime. And at the end of, if you look at the end of someone's life and have a look what that £30,000 would have been spent on, it would have been on dealing with lung cancer, respiratory disease, cardiac surgery, and actually the £30,000 was spent that the patient themselves didn't have a very good quality outcome. We've been working closely with the clinicians and it sounds really simple, but we've uncovered that if we spend far less than that on smoking cessation projects, on more prevention, and going into schools and teaching people the importance of not smoking, that will deliver so much more cost effectiveness to the NHS. The patient outcome is far better, and the clinicians are a lot happier because you can imagine having to deal with patients dying of lung cancer permanently is not a good thing to be doing day in, day out. And we're now able to invest our resources, and we're looking at clinical pathways, and we really are seen as assistants to the clinicians. And really, there's a demand for accountants now that's never been there until, and we are in demand as a result of what we offer, the skills we've got, analytical skills, as well as the typical maths you'd expect us to have and the costing skills.
Wow, gosh, it's fascinating to hear how close the world of accountancy gets to stuff that is in the newspapers. I go to work every day and we talk about the NHS, and yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just want to introduce our final panelist. Christina Christoforou. She is the founder and director of CMNC Associates Limited. They offer interim CFO services, so that's Chief Financial Officer services, for companies that are rapidly growing. I'm really keen to talk to her because obviously we've spoken to Bola, who's in the city, spoken to Tim, who's in the public sector, and now Christina is an entrepreneur. She did it herself, self-starting, so I think that's quite unique, really. I'm right in thinking that you have a specialism in kind of young businesses and women as well, Christina. So I guess my question is how did you get into that? How did you decide one day, I'm just going to not do any of the normal path, I'm just going to set up a business?
Oh my gosh, it's a long story, but just to kind of give you a bit of background, I guess, you know, it all started for me with finance. When I was about 14, my aunt Cordelia actually got me work experience. So when we was at school, we had to do 2 weeks work experience, and she got me into this law firm. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life at that age or anything like that. In fact, I was so kind of distant from it. You know, I just used to sing all the time and things like that. Didn't really focus on potentially having a career in any kind of industry at all. I did that as work experience and I just loved it. You know, I worked in different areas within the firm, but I just genuinely loved being in that finance team. And so when I went back to school, I decided that I was going to go and study accountancy, but I left school with a D in maths at GCSE level. So obviously a lot of kind of colleges wouldn't have taken me in. And my aunt, I'm so lucky to have her because she basically convinced the firm and was like, look, she's pretty low risk. You haven't got to pay her a lot. Just hire her and, you know, see how she gets on. And so they got me, I got a job there as an accounts junior, you know, really like low level stuff, but I just loved it. It gave me a real sense of like responsibility, belonging, but also achievement, because I learned really early on in the kind of industry that finance wasn't what people thought. And it was really great to do certain things, like when you are matching up two pieces of document and agreeing them, like reconciling them. It's like that real sense of achievement, job satisfaction that, you know, they agree and you're like, yes, oh my God, I've done something right. I love it. And just through kind of doing the different jobs within the firm, like I got involved in so many different areas within the departments, and I got to sort of like assistant management accounts level. And I found that I was really capped because essentially I was doing the job of a management accountant, but I weren't given the title. I was managing teams, but I wasn't given like the pay recognition. And so I really felt like I hit a ceiling. And so I decided at that point that I was going to sort of become qualified. And that's when I started my ACCA. And, you know, luckily there was like no minimum requirements to join it. And I'm just so glad, because it was really tough in the beginning, juggling like the work and the studies, especially as I was going further and further into my career and becoming more of a leader. And I actually failed a number of, like my first exam a number of times, but I was so determined, and I'm so glad that I stuck with it because it was so well worth the commitment. It helped me not only like build confidence in the work that I do and the work that I offer, but it also kind of built the confidence in myself, which is obviously, you know, I just knew that I had more to offer the industry, which is why, you know, in I think about 2017, I decided to set up on my own, because I saw that where I was working for these really large firms, they had the resources, you know, they had loads of finance people, they had access to big top accountancy firms that could really kind of help guide them and give them these expertise. But I saw that there was like the smaller businesses, that they were the people that really needed it the most. They had passion for what they did, but they lacked maybe education around running a business and also the kind of financial aspect of it. And I quickly saw that so many people had, where I worked with the businesses, they'd got themselves into financial distress and trouble, and so stressful because it's your own business. It affects you in a totally different way, because you risk your livelihood. You're all dependent on that. Your family are dependent on the growth of the business and it working. And so for me, I just knew that that's where I needed to be. And I was like, you know, Tim said, I was really good with communicating with people, and And that's basically, how I've kind of gone into growing my business.
So am I right in thinking that because you work on this kind of client basis, that like, you know, one day you're helping a food business, the next day you're helping a fashion business, the next day it's a tech business. It sounds very diverse, maybe not what people would expect of a kind of financial or accounting background. I mean, what is the best part of your job, do you think?
Oh, there's so many things. I think for me, it's really one of the things is like setting this standard that, oh, you're an accountant, but you don't do tax returns. No, I don't do tax returns. I don't do company accounts. I don't have an accounting practice. And it's really kind of getting into their business and going, yeah, no, I can sort that out for you. So rewarding because no day is the same. But it obviously brings so many challenges. You know, I've had to kind of really think on my feet in terms of growing my business. And like I use Instagram, for instance, to educate my audience, especially within the female entrepreneur space, because I saw early, like last year, there were so many businesses that were growing or starting up and they had no idea about finance. So I was like, I love Instagram. I love being on Instagram stories. And so to bring that into my business was amazing. And just to be able to help different sectors. So I've worked with law firms, funeral directors, business coaches, tech startups. I've got a window manufacturing like company, so different, and each one brings its own challenges, but essentially they all want the same thing, which is to understand their numbers and build further financial wealth. And to be able to provide that financial expertise to those businesses that need it is just so rewarding.
So am I right in thinking that you don't need to be mathsy to do what you do?
Oh, definitely not. Like, as you've seen, I am, when it comes to maths, even now, I'm not a maths person. And people think that's crazy, because they just assume, like, whenever you're out at dinner, right, and someone knows that you're an accountant, they'll go, oh, well, we'll let you split the bill. I'm like, I mean, I can use a calculator. But essentially, I would describe what I do as being a problem solver. Whether it's agreeing a bank account or a set of accounts or implementing a system, it just means that I take a step back. I take the time to understand like what the process is, to identify the problems and what's causing, you know, whether that's talking to a finance person or what have you, to understand why they've got low morale within their business or within the department. And then essentially the solution presents itself, and so be able to provide that and that expertise around implementing that solution, that's what I would describe as what I do. It's not mathsy at all.
Well, we are rapidly moving towards the audience questions part of this, so if you want to ask a question, please do use the Q&A function to the right of your screen. Again, you can be anonymous, you can use your name, let us know where you're joining from. If you want to, that would make us happy. And if you like anyone else's question, please do like it. We'll try and ensure that those ones that are really burning for all of you, we answer. So feel free to start doing that now. I've got a couple of questions to just sort of tide us over. So I'll start with Danny on this one. Found a fact before we join this. You're 24 times more likely to become a doctor if your parents were doctors compared to if your parents did any other type of work. Similarly, you're 17% more likely to become a lawyer if your parents are lawyers. Apparently this is known as microclass reproduction. So I wanted to ask, what can parents be doing to encourage their children into looking beyond what they do?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think there's a couple of really key points in young people's lives that will define their futures. And I think that, again, there's such an inequality around it currently. And I think the 2 points I'm talking about are work experience and internships. I think that they are so crucial. And I think that it's no surprise, those statistics that you've just read out to me, because unfortunately, if you're from a family background that doesn't have a professional network within it, it's so tough to forge those. And I think that, you know, the work experience stuff in particular, you're asking students at the moment to go out and source their own. You know, they don't really have connections. If they don't, again, feel like they've got a great academic background, they're going to self-limit themselves because we don't do enough to boost their confidence and make them feel that anything is achievable. So I think what's super important for parents around that work experience time is to kind of be bold and be brave, and install that into your kids, because I can assure you there are a lot of businesses that want to help. There are a lot of companies that are trying to do more in this space. And I think it's about putting your best foot forward and pushing your kids into that kind of confidence, being like, look, no one knows what they're doing at work experience. Just because Stephen's dad is a lawyer doesn't mean that he's going to go into a bank of work experience and feel like he's got all the answers. Every 16-year-old is anxious, they're conscious. So I think being that positive influence about that is super important. And I think ways to do that, to help them ascertain what sectors and industries might be good for them, visit the body's websites. You've got things like the ACCA, you have things like the IET, the engineering and technology. So you have all of these things that you can do more to research, which is quite open. So I think, it's be bold, be confident, and kind of push them to achieve more where you can.
I definitely feel that one of the key decisions when you're looking at people from, lower economic backgrounds, thinking about professional careers is money. Does it cost too much to do it? Is it going to pay me well? I probably have other things I need to pay for. There's no flat I can stay in for free, Actually, Tim, maybe this is one for you. What can a person expect to earn if they pursue accounting?
That's a really interesting question, and I'd like to say you can earn lots and lots of money being an accountant. So, for example, the chief executive of Barratt's the Builders, which is a FTSE 100 company, happens to be a qualified accountant. By the way, 20% of all FTSE chief executives are qualified accountants. The chief executive of Barratt's earned £3 million last year. So, the numbers potentially are huge. But let's come back down to a bit of reality. In the NHS, I can categorically tell you, if you were a qualified accountant, you will earn at least £15,000 a year more than an unqualified accountant doing a similar job. And if you think you're going to be in a career for 40 years, that's potentially £600,000 extra earning over a career for what is just 5 years hard work. And don't get me wrong, it's hard work, but the rewards are massive.
Well, that is certainly very compelling. Should I become an accountant? It's very, very, very compelling. I've got so many great questions coming in here. Thank you so much for sending them in. I'm going to try and get through loads of them because they're fantastic. I have a question here from Eve Bennett. What is the hardest but most useful lesson you've learned on your career journey?
So, I think for me, resilience is one of the hardest lessons and most useful lessons I learned, because very early on for me, I had a lot of rejections and then I had a lot of knockbacks. And what I had to make sure to know, what I needed to learn for myself is not to let people's lack of their view of my potential determine what I thought I could achieve in the future. So there's going to be situations where people don't see your potential or fail to see it. And that's not a failure on your part sometimes. That's sometimes a failure of their part and not being able to see your potential and what you can achieve in the future. And for me, I always had to make sure that I didn't let that stop me. I always had to push forward. I didn't have anybody in my life who could advise me about accountancy or finance. I had to go out there and look for it myself. I had to make sure that even when I got some sort of rejection and people didn't see what I knew that I could do, I just wanted people to give me a chance. So, for example, I would look for work experience and I would want to just work for free just so I could be in an environment so I can learn a bit more. And people wouldn't really want to even give me that chance, even just to work for free. And for that was a massive knockback for me, because I thought to myself, I really want to get into this. I don't have anybody in my life that can advise me on it. I didn't know anybody could give me a chance, and nobody was giving me a chance. So what I would always say to people is to be resilient. Never let anything stop you. Never let people's views stop you from aspiring to be better. Throughout your career, there's going to be moments when you fail. I think mistakes are always going to be made, and it sounds a little bit cliche, especially for me. And I say that because I've heard people say that to me before, but it's really important because you're going to make mistakes, especially at the start of your career. There's going to be times where you do things that work, that you get things wrong, and you might feel like it's the end of the world, but trust me, it really isn't. The next day will be different. There'll be something different. Someone else is going to make a mistake even worse than you. So resilience is key for me, I think.
Amazing, thank you. I'll remember that myself. There is someone else doing journalism worse than me, which is great to know. So I've got another question here from Isabella Zhang. Thank you for this one. She's asking, how can you network effectively? Also, bear in mind we're in a pandemic, can't really go anywhere. And actually, in fact, Christina, I thought maybe you could pick this one up. And I'd like to add my own little bit to that. Networking effectively, isn't that all part of the same cliquey problem anyway?
It's a great question. Like for me, networking has been a massive part of how, I've kind of grown my business and things like that. I think a lot of people, go in with networking with a pretense, they want something from someone. Whereas what I've tried to do, and I definitely had that in the beginning, whereas what I've tried to do now is just genuinely build connections and just connect other people to one another. So if I've met someone that, say, for instance, I don't know, helps a company raise finances, and I know a company that needs help raising finance, I'll always try to remember people and connect people, because for me, I found that people won't necessarily remember what you do, but they'll remember the feeling that you've left them with. And that is, honestly, it has paid 10 times over to just be able to network. And things like networking effectively, I've gone on Zoom calls, and it is really daunting at first, especially if you're new to networking. But everyone feels the same. And that's what I really learned early on. Even when we weren't in a pandemic and we'd go into networking, everyone would be so nervous and they would stick with the people that they went with. But when you're that person and you're just like, well, everybody else is the same as me. No one's better. No one's worse than I am. So I haven't got anything to lose. You just go and you build connections. And I think it has been a massive part, especially being an entrepreneur. It can be really, really lonely. So my support network and my friends have been amazing.
I've got a question in from Jess from Manchester. I think, Danny, you might be able to help with this one. She's asking what you can be more employable when you can't do any volunteering and you can't do any work experience because we're in the pandemic. Now, I know you do a lot of digital stuff, so I thought maybe you'd be able to pick this up.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think that the answer is that we live in a digital age now, and it's, we can take advantage of that. There's information everywhere. And I think particularly online learning, and there's so many great platforms, not just Your Game Plan. There's some that offer some more advanced learning as well. So even if you're, looking to change career and you're already a little bit into it, but the fact is that these qualifications are available at your fingertips. And I think it does require self-motivation. It desires to want to do more, but you can learn so much. And I think moreover than that, it's not just the process of learning. It's the reflection of your personality that portrays to potential employers. Actually learning a skill and taking the time to do that is 50% of what online training does for you. The other 50% is it showcases your desire for self-improvement. So I think that would be the number one thing. I think secondly, it's really broaden your horizons out of your comfort zone about your own watching or listening, or the things that you would kind of listen to on a podcast or watch on Netflix. Look into other things. A great example of this would be a film like The Big Short, which, is just an incredible movie, and you learn so much from it, and you find your brain working in different ways. So I think that the best advice I can give is don't waste time in a time where it's easy to. Even if you want to relax and find entertainment, find learning within that. Always push yourself. So, maybe don't watch that romantic comedy. Watch a Netflix documentary about, trading funds via, et cetera, et cetera. And, that's hard for me to say because I do love a romantic comedy. But I do think that, learn when you can, even if it's through entertainment, would be my number one answer.
Amal has written in and has asked, what are the resources which can give us an idea of the careers that I remember you saying that's kind of what you did, is you just went online and Googled.
Yeah. So I literally just went online. Literally what I did was go online, and I think a lot of things, and a lot of reason why people don't find out about things is due to lack of research. There's so much information out there available for people. There's so many different organizations willing to support and help young people. But because people don't know about it, when I was at school, when I was at college, nobody knew about the organisations that I found out about. Nobody was mentioning it at school, but it took me going out of my way to look and research online. So I started off by looking at what employees were looking for, as I mentioned earlier on. I looked at job roles that were put up on Indeed and things like that. And what I started to notice was a trend on what employees were looking for. And that started off my understanding. So, okay, this is what to expect in my career. This is what people are doing when they're working in accounting and finance. So that's what I would say. I would just say utilize the internet, because there's a wealth of information out there that people don't get to see. So start by looking at, for example, if you wanted to go into the banking industry, for example, look at banking, go on their website, look at what they require for their grad schemes, look at the kind of things they ask for when you want to go on their graduate schemes, look at their school leaver programs. when their opening periods are, their placement programs, what's available for them to do that. Because a lot of employers offer placements for young people that people don't know about. And when I'm at work, I always tend to see the same similar types of people who apply for these things. And the reason why it's because it's not because it's not out there, it's available for everyone to see, but it's just about you taking the time to go out and look for it yourself. So a lot of it, just Google and look for companies, look for a specific industry you want to go into, look on their websites, look what they require, and that will kind of that will get you started.
So I've got a question here from Holly Going. She asked, do you have any advice for those who aren't sure what sector they'd like to go into? Is it better to go to university just for a degree? Ladder.
That's I couldn't catch the end of the question you asked. I'm gathering from the question it was whether they should go to university or not. Was that the gist of the question?
Yeah, if you don't know what to do, is it best to just go to uni anyway, just to get a degree, or actually should you start looking for a career but you don't know where to start?
Well, my advice on that sort of thing is go where you think is the right thing for you at the time. I wouldn't suggest go to university and do an aimless degree that probably won't have a job at the end of it. I think you need to have some sort of idea of what you want to do, although I say that having found myself into accountancy by accident. Opportunities will present themselves. You need to take those opportunities. But I can't give an answer to that question because every case is different. Your personal circumstances are fundamental. You may not be able to afford to go to university, and you need to take that into account. So, difficult question to answer, but I think the opportunities as they present should dictate what you do.
That was a great answer, actually. Christina, you've got your hand up. Does that mean you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the one thing I would say is figure out, have a think about what you love doing. It could be that you're kind of really good at a specific skill set, and then it's looking at, well, what jobs do that? What jobs, you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, finance, okay, I have to be good at maths. But hearing us, there's so many different avenues to finance. And like Tim was saying, people that are qualified accountants go on to being, chief executive levels of companies. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because you pick a specific industry that you're stuck in that. So I would just explore what you love to do, because when you take on a job or you start your own business, you're in it for a long time, and you're doing 9 to 5 every day with people. You want to enjoy what you do. So that's something that I would definitely factor in as well.
Another thing I would say is a lot of the programs that employers offer allows you to move around in the company. So even myself, I've had the chance to move into different teams to figure out where I would like to, where I fit best and what I enjoy doing. So there are opportunities for you to try different things when you work for companies as well. Don't just think because you start working for companies you have to stay in a specific area forever. Companies usually have each year you'd rotate. So a lot of companies do that, where you rotate to different teams and you get to choose what teams you want to go into based on what you enjoy and what interests you. So that's another point to make as well.
Right. And actually, this is just my question to Tim, because hearing you talk about trying to find the right job, I think regionality is probably another consideration you might have, what's near me. And actually, of our panel, Tim is in Wales. He's the furthest away from all of us. So I thought I would throw that question to you.
Interesting. Yeah. I was going to say, interested in that one. It's if you were lucky enough to be born in Wales, you probably want to stay there forever. And I have all my career, I've worked in Wales. However, I am very well aware that the ACCA accountancy qualifications will open doors throughout the world. We're in hundreds and hundreds of countries, and we're in massive demand. So if you are just somebody who wants to stay in your little village and practice as an accountant, or if you want to go and explore the world, the accountancy profession is probably the right one to go into, whatever way. And the pandemic has proved we can even work from home. We don't even have to go anywhere now. We can operate very effectively from where we are. So I don't think location's a challenge. Location's quite exciting, I think.
Oh, lovely. Great stuff. So we've had a question in here from an anonymous member. They ask, for the women on the panel, how do you cope with being in male-dominated environments? Christina, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I guess for me, in the beginning, it was intimidating because I worked in the legal industry. So at 16, I was, talking to managing partners that were at the age of like men that were like 60 years old, and it can be really intimidating. But I think it's just about building your own confidence, and knowing your worth, and like definitely things like studying and really understanding my job like made me a kind of a better, well-rounded person to deal with these things, because you will always get difficult situations, and it is hard. But it's like Ola was saying, that you can't take things to heart. Like, you can't, just because somebody has rejected you or said no or said something, don't let that destroy your self-worth and your self-confidence. You're more than what someone thinks or what someone says. So and I think right now in this day and age as well, there's so many support networks for women in business, especially within very male dominated industries. And it is the rise of women, I think, is a really big thing at the moment.
Well, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, so I totally agree with Christine that it can be very intimidating at first. I think when I first started, just being in banking, especially as well, when I started working in banks, is obviously a lot male dominated environment to be in. But personally, for me, what was great for me was that I met a lot of senior female role models who really inspired me and showed me the possibilities that was available for women in the industry. And as much as we have a lot more to go and what more to do in terms of that in that area, in terms of balancing that male to female senior management level, things are changing and improving. There are a lot of women who are breaking boundaries at the moment, and having women like that around me really helps inspire me, help build my self-confidence to see that, even though I'm surrounded around a lot of males, there are women who are at the top of their game in the industry, and I can actually achieve that as well. So.
And there are also a lot of men that support us as well. Like, I think there are amazing men that I have had in my career that have really helped me. One man, he actually was the person that gave me the idea about leaving my job and convinced me, and said that he would support me. So I think there are some amazing male and women sort of like role models.
Same here for me as well. So even working at Sentinel, I've met a lot of senior female role models, but I've also met a lot of male allies as well who are very supportive of young females coming into the industry as well. So there are a lot of people helping. There are a lot of people out there to help you out. Every single person is different. You might get some bad experiences, but a lot of people are very personable and really willing to help people starting out in their career.
Right. So we've had another question here. I apologise that I'm just whizzing through these because they're so good. So, I've got a question here from Emily Jane Dalton. I think, Danny, this might be one for you to pick up. It says here, and I know you're gonna say I can't decide, but what she wants to know: what are the top 3 soft skills?
That is a really tough question. I think I can answer this because I think I would go to the ones that are most. The ones that you'll come into action with most in your life. I think the first one is any kind of public speaking, anything that can help you understand how to talk to a room. And that can be a room of 5 people, it could be a room of 5,000 people. I think there are certain things and certain techniques that are so important, because I do feel there is such the biggest reason for it is you could have the best idea in the world, you could be the best person in the room at your job, but so much of our society is drawn to confidence and delivery that, and I think this comes back, and what I would say is very strongly to the last question about, being female in a workplace dominated by males. This is something which I believe is particularly more important for women, is having the skills and the confidence to push that through, because there are examples, unfortunately, where men will talk over and that needs to be kind of stamped out. But it's about that self-learning and projecting that confidence through your delivery. So I do think that that's the number one topic. I think the second one would be, the ability to kind of sit there and talk about criticism and how you take it and how you deliver it. I think it's such an important skill in the workplace that often gets overlooked. And I think it's how you receive and give out criticism in the workplace, because it can really guide almost every relationship you have in the workplace, whether it's from a client or from someone you manage or someone that manages you. Really well understanding how to communicate, particularly around criticism, is massively important. And then the third one I would say kind of comes down to etiquette and understanding of the environment you're in. So understanding before you go into a new role or a new office, what is the culture of that company? Because culture is a super important word these days, and particularly around the professional landscape, which Coco, you touched on earlier. Like, accountancy and banking and law isn't just suits and ties anymore. Every culture is different in every company you work in. So you really need to strive to understand that, and what is the etiquette of the company you're dealing with? What is the culture of the company you're dealing with? So you can make sure that you fit in and don't feel anxious around going in and being out of place, or people maybe thinking you're not quite researched enough around the topic.
So I've got another one here. I don't think which roulette, panelist roulette, who's going to take this one? So Anonymous has asked, is having a social media account important? It's quite a difficult one. I'm sure it will be difficult because you're all in different sectors. So actually, let's start. Christina, why don't we start with you? Social media, important?
I think it is, because for me, social media, obviously, aside from building my business and building connections on it, it gives you access to things that you wouldn't necessarily have known about. It gives me access to inspirational speakers. I can follow their content. I can understand their content. It gives me access to actually connect with those speakers and ask them questions. I think it can be an amazing tool if used in the right way. So I would say I'm all for social media.
Okay. Kim, social media, vital or not vital?
Vital, absolutely. As a Welsh person, everybody in Wales knows everybody else. Everybody, we use social media. My biggest strength, I'm not particularly good at accountancy. My biggest strength is my networking skills. And my networking skills are strongest because I might not know the answer, but I certainly will know someone who will know the answer. And through social media, I'm learning all the time who are these key people. And it is one thing I can tell everybody, networking is probably the most important thing for you to be successful.
Okay. So, Paula, I want to hear from you on this, but I'm going to just slightly tweak it a little bit. It's quite a lot of time, social media, and I think everyone would agree that it dominates a lot of headspace. I mean, maybe we're all over-egging it. What do you think?
For me, it's a bit of a balance because I'm not really on a lot of social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn, what I think is important about social media is about how you use it. I think if you use it in the right way to benefit you, it can be a very, very important tool for you. It would be a great way for you to learn about things, great for you to meet people and network. But I think also it's about how you utilize it. It's important, but I also think you have to look at the good parts in it and not get too drawn into the negative parts and get into a rabbit hole and things on social media might not be helpful to your career. So I think it's always important to be very cautious on social media as well, because obviously whatever you put online is there permanently forever. So I think use it in the right way that's best for you and your career, and always think about what your employees might look, how employees might feel if they see certain things on social media. So be cautious of things like that, but use it in the best way.
Yeah, I would just. The only thing I would like to add is I think that you have to it's quite independent to you as a person. And I think for young people, especially that are coming out of this generation where their life has been dictated by social platforms at school and in their teenage years, if you felt a sense of anxiety around your social media use in your own life, and you felt like it's something that has maybe been a restriction on your confidence or anything like that, then be aware of it in a business environment, because those feelings come back. The same feelings you get about the likes and the posts from a personal post on Instagram would be the same thing that happens if you put your business out there and you didn't get the pickup that you wanted. So I think, yeah, it can be a super effective tool, but you need to be able to control that emotionally and mentally as well. And I think if that's something you've struggled with, then be aware of that as a downfall.
Absolutely.
Right. So I've got one more question, which I think is actually more about your lives rather than about your advice. That is, in your lives, what was the key work experience you did? So who wants to go first? No volunteers. Oh, all right. I feel like a school teacher now. Okay. Oh, Christina, thank you. Thank you for that.
I guess the key work experience for me was those 2 weeks when I was 14, because essentially that has led me to this path 22 years later, since I was 14, like to to be on this path and to be doing what I'm doing, you know, without that experience, I honestly don't know what I would be doing. So yeah, that for me was a knowing that was an opportunity.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Go on, Danny.
Oh, and I mean, for me, it was my first job. My first opportunity was at a company called Incisive Media, and I was 17, I think, when I got it. And it was a sales floor, which was pretty raucous. It was a good time, but there was a lot of work to be done. And when I come back to like understanding a business environment and etiquette and these things, like I didn't know that at the time. So I'd go in, everyone would be jokey and friendly, and you'd go out for drinks after work. And for the first 6 months, I just thought it was like school and it was your mate. So there was times where, you know, you'd say things or you're acting in a way that just wasn't appropriate, really. You know, not anything terrible, but stuff that, you know, you look back on and cringe a little bit. And I think, you know, what I wish I could have done differently was just had a bit more self-motivation to learn those things before I went in, or maybe seek more advice and be like, you know, what is the right way to act in these environments? So I think I come out of there with a much better idea of the right way to act in the right environment.
You all had your like key moments so young. I can't believe it. My key moment was like 2 weeks ago. Like, gosh. Tim, what about you? What was your key work experience moment?
I'm going to my key work experience moment back to Namibia. For years, NHS Wales and the NHS in the UK pride itself on going out doing public consultations. We go and discuss with the public proposals to shut a hospital or develop a service. Historically, I think we've decided before we've gone out to consultation what we're going to do. That's how I felt. When I was in Namibia, they discussed with the patients, they consulted and they listened, and they developed their services based on the needs of the person and the patients in front of them. And for me, that was the biggest learning I've ever had. It's like, we need to be speaking to our customers more, our patients in the NHS, and develop our services around them, not what we think we should be doing.
Well, that's good to hear. You can have those integral moments in the job. You know, you don't need to have it before. It's nice to know. There's time for us all. Bola, what about you?
So for me, in terms of work experience, I would say the key moment for me, because I found I struggled to get work experience, like unpaid work experience, and I was still looking to get into finance. But a key moment for me was my first job at an accountancy firm called BKL. And that literally was a massive thing for me because it really gave me a sense of purpose. I really felt like a grown up, and it was my first time in the industry. And I had a lot of people surrounded around me that helped me and really supported me to succeed. And that was a wonderful moment for me because it taught me a lot. That whole year of work experience, that whole year of apprenticeship taught me a lot, and that still helps me to stay till today in my current work at Santander.
We've had some more coming. I love this. I love that we're still getting questions coming in. Yes, Danny.
Sorry, Keiko, what was yours? You said it was a couple of weeks ago.
No. Well, you know, I'm just saying that every day's a school day, isn't it? Like the amount of time I'd be like, I should have. The thing that I often have in the lessons for me is like speaking up, when to, when not to, when to answer back, when to stand your ground. I mean, I'm still learning that all the time. Anyway, it's not about me. It's not about me, this. But if it makes anyone feel any better, I'm a journalist now, but I wasn't sure I wanted to be a journalist until I was until very late. So, you know, it's fine to not know. So I've got here a question from Lucy. Do any of you know a virtual work experience in the finance sector? Anyone come across that?
So, I mean, I try to, when people come to me and they want sort of work experience, obviously I run my own business, so it's very hard to know when you're going to have the clients and things like that. But I essentially try to, anyone that comes to me, I do try and help them, or, you know, will do what I can to have Zooms with them and things like that. But I actually don't know many others that do it. I'm sure there's loads, but I don't know. Sorry.
I'm not aware of any at the moment, but I am aware that a lot of employees are still offering opportunities for young people to still work. So if that involves you working from home, they'll probably provide you with all the necessary things that you need to work. So I'm not aware of any virtual experience, but I do see that people are still offering opportunities for people.
Yeah, I mean, we speak to kind of careers advisors at schools kind of on a daily basis. So, Lucy, really dependent on kind of, I would advise where you are in your life cycle, whether you're at school or at university. I think if you are, I'd really recommend you go and speak to your careers leads in either situation, because they're doing a lot. And the other bit of advice which has been illuminated to me actually recently, which I wasn't aware about, but reach out to your local council. They work with a lot of the local enterprise networks there. They're constantly arranging these kind of things for people within their region. So definitely ask the question to any of those people, because we see it every day that people are really pushing this through.
Go on, Tim.
I was just going to mention the NHS. I know Wales, and I'm pretty sure all the other devolved nations of the UK would welcome students who'd like to go on work placements. So every hospital has a finance department. Give them a ring. If you struggle to get a good answer in the first place, write to the director of finance. Ask to shadow him for a day. Get to see what they do. And if that inspires you, go and do it. If it doesn't, you work for a long time, right? Don't go into the wrong job just for the money. Go into the job because you love it. The money will follow.
Well, that is fantastic advice, and that's advice for life, that is. Thank you so much, Tim. So unfortunately, it's a great place to leave this, though, so thank you for that. We are actually wrapping up, so I'm going to have to bid everyone goodbye, but just some quick bits. We've not been able to get to all the audience questions today, so ACCA, our lovely sponsors of this event, are actually hosting an Insta Live. It will take place on the 3rd of February at 12:30, so you can get more of your questions answered there. Of course, have to say thank you to our amazing panel, Bola, Christina, Tim and Danny. Thank you so much, and the audience for asking all your great questions. I'm so sorry we couldn't get to all of them. At the end of this event, there's going to be a short survey, so fill it in if you can. That'd be great. We're just going to ask some feedback. Virtual events, we're still learning and trying to improve, so any feedback is gratefully received. And there will be opportunity. If this talk about finance has got you interested, you can sign up to the ACCA newsletter and start thinking about whether you want to take that career path and learn how to do that as well. In about a week from now, you will get a recording of the event if you choose to look at it, if there's anything you want to refer to. And I think I've covered it all. The only thing to say is thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our speakers. Have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you very much.
We're going to wait. Bye.